Hi there. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 328. I'm really excited to be here with you today, and I'm not only recording this episode on audio, I am also recording it on video, which you can find on my YouTube channel. If you've never watched the podcast, whether it's a guest episode or an episode like this where it's just me talking, you can always hop on YouTube and watch it. One of the nice things about watching it on YouTube is that you can comment so much easier than if you listen to it on audio. So if you want to leave me a comment or leave me a question, you can definitely do that. And when you do, that promotes the podcast more because it shows you're interacting with the episode, and YouTube will send it out to more yoga teachers. So I'd love to support you. Ask your questions. To get to the episode on my YouTube channel, the easiest way to do it is just go to my website, Bare Bones Yoga, and you'll see in the drop down YouTube. The other thing you could do is go to my Instagram, Bare Bones Yoga, and you'll see in the highlights section on my profile page, YouTube channel. So either way, you can get to it. Today, you're going to walk away from listening to this episode with a plan, a better understanding, and a brand new resource that you can access to feel more confident. Now, don't hang up. I know if you're a longtime listener of the show, you might be saying, gosh, I feel like she talked about confidence in last week's episode and the episode before. This is going to be a little bit of a different take on it. And the most important thing about this episode, quite frankly, is the new resource I'm going to share with you that I only briefly mentioned last time. So if you are a loyal listener and you listen to every episode, first of all, shout out to you. Second of all, you heard about this resource in last week's episode. However, you're going to hear in depth about it today because I actually have teachers enrolling and I'm super excited to tell you about it. I'm recording this episode on December 19th, 2024, and this will go live on the 23rd, December 23rd, 2024. Everything I'm talking about here today is evergreen, meaning just like the tree, it's always around. You can listen to it anytime. Even though I'm going to take this conversation in a way that really leverages the fact that in real life, in real time right now, we're at the end of the year, and that means the new year is beginning. And with that, new year, new goals, new energy. You can listen to this podcast episode any time of year and implement the action plan that I share and still get the same amazing results. What I wanted to do before we go into the action plan is I wanted to share with you a little bit about what I've experienced over the years in terms of how not having confidence has affected me. I've been teaching for 22 years, so truth be told, it's been a while since I've felt nervous teaching my classes. I can remember though, when I was a newer teacher, there were definitely certain things that happened that made a big impression on me and not in a good way. In fact, I can remember when I first began to teach, and I was teaching for Baron Baptiste, who was, I'm going to sneeze, and I really don't want to sneeze, so I'm trying to touch my nose if you're watching this on YouTube to prevent myself from sneezing. My dream job was to teach for Baron Baptiste. And because I had been practicing there for a while and then began going to his teacher trainings, I did end up getting a teaching slot working for him at what was at that time the Columbus Ave studio in Boston. And I can distinctly remember many, many, many classes where I would drive to the studio from my condo in Charlestown, Massachusetts, and I would sit in my car on Columbus Ave or wherever I parked, and I'd be terrified to go in. And I would just sit there in the car, and it wasn't even like I was listening to music. And it's really interesting because I have such a deep somatic memory of sitting in my car and just ruminating over, where are they going to like my sequence? Am I really going to do this? I'm so nervous. What if they don't like me? What if somebody sees me walking into the studio who's a student? How am I going to start a conversation with them? I just was so nervous. And I also remember there was nobody I could really talk to about it, even though at the time, and this was 2003, 2004, we had a very active teacher community and we had regular meetings as teachers, which people don't really do anymore. I did not feel comfortable bringing this up. And so I didn't. And a lot of the training we were receiving was very skills oriented. And even though there was a mindset component, there was very little out there helping me with my confidence problem. I can also remember after I'd been teaching for this, at this point, it was a number of years, when I had really established myself as an expert in anatomy, I began to be sought out by other teachers who had their own studios, and they wanted me to teach the anatomy portion of their 200-hour training. And I remember this one situation where I was asked to teach an anatomy workshop, and I went to this conference room in this facility to teach this anatomy training to this group of yoga teachers that were affiliated with this particular studio. And I remember as I was setting up and the students were filing in, I struck up a conversation with one of the attendees, and she mentioned to me that she was a physical therapist. And I felt myself get so nervous. And I remember I went into the bathroom and I thought I was going to throw up, because in that moment I was asking myself, what could I possibly have to offer this woman who's a physical therapist and who absolutely knows anatomy? And I pulled myself together and I went out there and I taught the workshop. And afterwards, do you know what she said? She came up to me and she said, Karen, even though I understand anatomy, I don't really understand it, or I didn't really understand it for teaching yoga. And if I hadn't come to this workshop, I would have never realized how to do that, how to apply it to cueing and sequencing. And obviously I felt so much relief and I felt so great and I felt so qualified and I felt confident. And I have plenty of other examples that I can, fill in here. The idea is, though, to just share with you that everybody has their own unique experiences that, really are just signs that they don't feel confident. Now, it's interesting because I was doing a video on Instagram the other day, and when I posted it and it touched on this subject, somebody commented and they said, it's perfectly natural not to feel confident. It's perfectly natural to be nervous, to maybe even sweat a little bit, to get flushed a little bit, to stumble over your words a little bit. And while I agree with that to a certain extent, at the end of the day, you're the only one that can decide, number one, how do you feel? And number two, is it a feeling that is a productive feeling, or is it a feeling that is holding you back from showing up and being the kind of yoga teacher you want to be? It's the sort of thing where, think about athletes. When athletes go to play a game, whether it's football, hockey, whatever it is, basketball, they're nervous, but they're nervous excited. They're nervous adrenaline. They're nervous hyper-focused. There's a lot when we look at nervousness through the lens of neuroscience and the neurotransmitters and the things, the chemicals that are naturally released in our brain and into our body that heighten our awareness, that heighten our attention, that make us feel excited. This is what's called eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S, that feeling of anticipation and excitement that you get when you're going to do something that is a high-level task. It's not the kind of thing, though, that's debilitating. It's not the kind of thing that's based in fear. And so you're the only one that can ask yourself, are these nerves that I'm feeling nerves of anticipation and excitement, like I can't wait to teach my class? Or are they nerves related to nervousness and stress and feeling pressure. We definitely don't want that. So let's talk just briefly here, and you may hear some of this, some of yourself in this as we're going through it, about some of the common struggles that yoga teachers face. When we look at it from kind of the what we can see point of view, things that are related to confidence are things around the two main tasks at hand for yoga teachers. What are we saying, i.e. the cues, and what are we doing, i.e. the sequence? And so we can be really clear and really specific about, some of the struggles you may be facing. If you're like a lot of the yoga teachers that I've talked to, there's a lack of being able to remember the sequence well. There is a feeling of repeating oneself over and over again instead of sharing cues in a more confident way or from what you feel like you know. I've talked about before how I recently was scrolling through TikTok and I saw this girl, this woman, and she was practicing teaching on her boyfriend. And she had this big book in front of her with this huge script with all these words that she was basically reciting to him as she was practice teaching. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that at some point, you'll most likely want to move away from a script to teaching in a way that feels more natural. And so one of the struggles that yoga teachers face is, well, how do I do that? How do I find my confidence to speak from what I know? And I say this a lot, when you speak from what you know, your confidence grows. So you can see a direct connection there between what you're saying and how you're feeling. The challenges that a lot of yoga teachers face around the sequence is, number one, teaching a sequence they don't even like, but they feel like they need to teach it. So I'm curious for you, do you love your sequence? Do you feel like when you taught your last class, as you look back on it, you can honestly say to yourself, every single thing in that sequence I created from my own knowledge and I love it? Or would you say, oh, there's a couple parts of that that weren't really parts that I liked, or I had them in there because I really felt like I had to include those pieces? So this is part of the struggle around sequencing, along with sort of the really common experience that has to do with remembering the sequence. And I've talked about this at length, this experience of going into the class, forgetting where you are in the sequence, having to practice with your class in order to hopefully remember what comes next. And really at the end of the day, if you're honest with yourself, you might basically admit that the only reason you're not remembering the sequence is because you change it every Monday. I can remember when I started teaching, there was a lot of fanfare around every Monday. Some of my colleagues would change their sequence and they would make a big thing about, okay, today's Monday, now for the week, we're going to focus on hips. And then the next Monday, okay, here's Monday. And now for the week, we're going to focus on, I don't know, shoulders. And it was this sort of, I don't want to say rite of passage, but it was this sort of way of approaching sequencing that people just followed along, except me. I didn't do that because I knew that if I kept changing the sequence, I was going to have a much harder time remembering it. I've used the metaphor before of, imagine if you're a Broadway performer and every time you go to perform your show, they hand you a brand new script an hour before curtain time. There's no way you'd be able to memorize it. And you'd say, why are you changing the words that I'm going to be speaking? Why are you changing the script? Oh, well, we decided that we needed to do that because the people that were here last time, even though these people are different, what if they heard from those first people and, we don't want them to get the same experience? I mean, that would be crazy. So this is when you really start to break down the quote unquote logic that teachers throw out there as to why they're changing their class sequence all the time, it really just doesn't hold water. And if the priority is feeling more confident, every yoga teacher would most likely agree that not changing the sequence until you get to a point where you know it so well, you can teach it without notes and teach it by walking around, that would be the only time when you would say to yourself, okay, now I'll change a couple of things about that sequence. But I certainly won't go back to 0 and start a completely new sequence. And again, and I say this all the time, I am not sitting here saying what I'm saying is right. I'm simply sharing with you not only what's worked for me, but in my study of yoga teachers, and I've trained so many yoga teachers in my program over the years, I know what works for a lot of people. And your experience, if you're going to start to dig your heels in and justify, well, my experience is different, and my classes are different, and my sequences are different, and my studio is different, that's just trying to defend something that might not be working for you. And my question to you is, why are you trying to defend that? Instead, what if you said, you know what, I'm just going to experiment with teaching the same sequence for the next 4 classes and see what happens. That is the sign of a teacher who's really looking to feel more confident, one who's willing to experiment with different things to find what works best for them, not for their students. We can't control how our sequence is going to land on them. So stop changing your sequence out of this assumption that that's what they need. You don't know what they need, and you don't even know who's going to come to your class. So you're changing it out of this pretend person that doesn't even exist except in your mind. So that's another struggle that yoga teachers have. And then, the second to last one has to do with my specialty, which is anatomy, and the reality for so many teachers that they didn't learn it in their 200-hour training. I would wonder what your experience was. Did you feel like you got adequate training in anatomy in your 200-hour? And did you walk away from your 200-hour able to speak anatomy in your cues and truly understand what you're talking about? And that's really the test. I just did a video today on Instagram, and I was talking about half pigeon and the hip movements in half pigeon and the knee movements, and how the knee is really just following along what the hip is doing, because the hip is higher up the kinetic chain than the knee. And so the hip and half pigeon on the bent knee side is in flexion and external rotation. The knee is in flexion and is pivoting slightly to create that inward swing of the shin. However, the knee is not a ball and socket like the hip, so it can't rotate. So this is why when we're cueing people in half pigeon, it's so much more helpful to cue to hip movements than to knee movements, because the hip is more built to move in the way we want it to move in half pigeon. We want it to externally rotate. We want to concentrically contract the muscles in the posterior hip of external rotation, the go-go cue muscles, gemelles, obturators, quadratus femoris, piriformis. But this level of detail and explanation can only happen when you truly understand anatomy. And so one of the challenges for yoga teachers is being out there teaching and realizing, I really didn't learn it in my 200-hour. And so the next step is, well, I'll just try to figure it out on my own. Matter of fact, just yesterday I did an Instagram live and somebody wrote as a comment, what muscles should I know? Well, number one, there's no way I can tell you that in an Instagram live. And number two, that question is just a tell that you're really even not sure how to approach learning anatomy. And that's because the reality is learning anatomy on your own is just about impossible. In the whole scheme of anatomy, we only need to know a subset of the entire story. But as a yoga teacher who doesn't understand anatomy, you don't know how to pull out of the full story just the subset of info that you need to learn. It's kind of like if your car broke down, you certainly wouldn't say to yourself, well, let me buy a book on fixing cars and let me try to fix it myself. You would go to a mechanic. And for some reason, yoga teachers feel that they can learn anatomy on their own. And I know why it is. Number one, it's because yoga teachers believe, well, I can buy a book and I can teach myself anatomy. And that's based on a false premise that only books alone teach you anatomy. If that were true, every yoga teacher in the world would know it, which is not true. And so that's really just a sign that the books alone are not enough. There needs to be dynamic, live conversation to really learn anatomy. And then the other piece of it is teachers really hold off once they're done with their 200-hour on giving themselves permission to hire an expert to help them learn something they don't know. There's a lot of concern around spending money, and it's not even an economical thing. For a lot of teachers that I talk to, they have the money. It's just that they don't feel like they can give themselves permission to invest in themselves so that they can learn anatomy. Because in their mind, they're thinking, well, I can go on Amazon and buy 3 books and just teach it to myself. And so as they go off on their own to try to self-learn anatomy, time's going by, they're teaching their classes, they're not feeling confident, and that just continues to be the situation. And the reality is there's nobody in your class that's auditing your class. There's nobody in your class that's making sure the cues you say are accurate in terms of the anatomy you're sharing. So there's really no external pressure to know it. That's why it's only a really small subset of teachers who will either get to a point where it's intolerable for them. Like, I cannot take it anymore, going into my classes and teaching and feeling like I'm saying the same stuff over and over again. And I really don't understand the movements I'm seeing, how I can help my students that are out of alignment. Somebody either gets to that point or they have so much inner integrity and drive and commitment that they seek out answers and experts and answers to their questions. And those are the subset of teachers who I work with inside my program. They are either tired of the self-taught process, not seeing the results they want, or they are just so driven to be the best they can be that they don't need anybody's permission to spend money on themselves. They know that they're worth it, and they know it's so much better than trying to figure it out themselves. So these are some of the common struggles that yoga teachers face. Now, for many years, I have run my own program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program. I mention it a lot on my episodes when it's appropriate to bring up examples from teachers I've worked with or things that I'm talking about that I expand upon inside the program. And I don't hide the fact that I have this program and the components of it, that it's a one-on-one program, that you get one-on-one coaching with me to really learn the anatomy and how to apply it to your teaching through the cueing and the sequencing. And it's very rare to get a program as a yoga teacher where you get one-on-one coaching. Just about all the programs are group. And so I really pride myself on the fact that I offer teachers one-on-one support, but that comes at a cost. And so the cost of my program is very reasonably priced, and it is a little bit more than a group program because you get one-on-one attention. And so I was thinking the other day, oh, and by the way, it's $2,199, and you can pay for it in 4 payments of $550 or 6 payments of I think it's $347. And I was thinking the other day, what would it be like if I could help yoga teachers build their confidence in a format that was a group format and in a way that was so priced at a price point that was so accessible that it would be a 100% slam dunk yes from any yoga teacher who looked at my offer. And so I sat for a couple of days thinking about it, and it just literally came to me. How about if I created a club where yoga teachers could be supported with live coaching? Because I knew that from my work in my individual program, the live coaching is the magic. Just like I said before, the reading from a book is not the magic. The live coaching is the magic, where the real aha moments happen. So I knew I wanted that to be part of it, and I wanted to price it in a way that was a total slam dunk for people. Slam dunk, yes. And so I came up with the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club, a group program where you will be able to access live workshops and Q&A sessions around cueing, sequencing, anatomy, and how to up level your mindset, how to conquer all those fears and thoughts that are negative and self-limiting beliefs that hold you back from teaching in a way that feels easy and fun and authentic and empowered and confident. And so over the past week, I've launched the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club. I've already had a number of teachers enroll, and I'm getting ready to offer the first workshop in the club. And so I wanted to tell you in this episode about what the features are of the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club. And I've already shared with you, there are live workshops and Q&A sessions, as well as downloadable teaching tools and exclusive audio and video lessons. So that's the mechanics of what you get. And it's all focused on helping you get that result of feeling more confident. Now, even though the work that I do with teachers in my one-on-one program, the Blueprint Learning Program, is a little different because it is one-on-one. I can share with you that when teachers take a step to invest in themselves, in this case, maybe it would be in this Yoga Teacher Confidence Club, there is right out of the gate this feeling of, oh my God, I'm on the right track. Because you're starting to take a step forward to invest in a program, or in this case, a membership, a monthly membership, to get the support you need. And so many teachers tell me they're out there on their own and they don't know where to go for their questions. They end up just Googling things or going on social media and looking for answers. And so the teachers that I've worked with in my one-on-one program, they have said to me that feeling of investing in themselves gives them such a feeling of joy and empowerment, like I'm taking charge of my teaching career. And then the next thing is, as we're working together, and some of these things you'll experience even in the club, it's not just exclusive to my one-on-one program, this feeling of connecting the dots. When you're learning the anatomy and you're learning how to apply it to the poses and the muscles in the poses, I've had so many teachers say, I'm having an aha moment here. I call it a light bulb moment, when they're finally realizing, oh, that's what roll the inner eyes of the elbows forward means, or that's why we're looking in that pose for the tailbone to be tucked and the pelvis to be posteriorly tipped, or that's why flexion is involved, or that's why in half pigeon I want to cue to the hip because it's external rotation versus the knee is just a hybrid, hinge pivot joint. So it's all these little pieces where teachers are having these light bulb moments. And with these light bulb moments, they're saying to me, I'm going into my classes now and I actually feel expert, feel qualified, feel like I know what I'm talking about. So these are some of the results that you can get when you work with a proven method, the proven methods that I am using both in the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club and my exclusive one-on-one program. Now, I want to tell you, and again, if you're listening to this in December, this part is time sensitive. If you're listening to this in another month, this particular part doesn't apply. But if you are listening to this in December, and this episode will go live on December 23rd, 2024, so it's only going to be applicable for about a week and a half. However, when you do enroll in the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club in December, you are a founding member, and that means you get the best rate of just $27 a month, less than $30 a month to enroll in a program where you're going to get live support from me through regular workshops and Q&A sessions is an absolute steal. We're going to be focusing on cueing, sequencing, anatomy, and mindset. So the 4 pillars of excellent teaching. So, you're going to be able to, for less than $30 a month, get the support you deserve so you can truly move forward as a more confident yoga teacher. And you can join the club for as many months as you want. There's no minimum. It's not like you have to be in for 90 days or you have to be in for 6 months. You could try it for a month and then drop out. But I bet that once you try it for a month, you're going to stay for many months because you're going to love the camaraderie, you're going to love the community vibe, and most of all, you're going to start to feel more confident, and you're going to start to have some of these aha light bulb moments that I'm talking about. Now, the other thing is when you enroll in December, not only do you get the best rate because the rate goes up January 1st, 2025, you're also going to get my Mindset Method program. Instead of $444, you're going to get it as a bonus for free. The Mindset Method program is a program I offered in March of this year, 2024. And I had a group of teachers. I did live trainings with them over a series of 4 weeks. And I shared with them a number of tools and habits that are grounded in neuroscience that helped them shift their mindset from one of lack of confidence to confidence. Now, some of this we're going to go over in the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club, but to get it in a program format where you literally can go through the training as if you were going through it with these other teachers live is the best way to absorb this information. And I'm giving you that program for free. Instead of $444, you're going to get it for free. So this idea of the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club, having more confidence as a yoga teacher is so transformational for you and could be so transformational for you if you are a yes for taking this step forward. And thinking back to what I mentioned at the beginning, when I was saying I didn't really have anybody to talk to about my lack of confidence, and you might not either. I mean, it's definitely not a topic that teachers like to bring up. And quite frankly, a lot of times when teachers bring up the sorts of problems that they're having, they're just sort of poo-pooed by other teachers. Oh, you'll get more experience and that problem will go away. Or it's natural that you feel that way until you get more experience. And I'm here to say, no, you don't have to suffer through feeling nervous when you're teaching. It's not related to experience. It's related to literal techniques that you can use as a teacher so that you feel more confident teaching. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you if you enroll in the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club. So I want to leave you with a couple of just final thoughts. Number one, I want to invite you to enroll. If you're listening and this is resonating with you, that's why I priced it at under $30. I want there to be no obstacles, no barriers to entry for you. So $27 a month is all it is, and you can do it for as long as you want, as short as you want. That's totally up to you. The link to enroll in the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club is on my website, barebonesyoga.com. It's on my Instagram in the link in my bio. And it's also in the show notes for this episode. The next thing I want to say is because you are finding out about this on my podcast, you are going to get an exclusive podcast listener bonus. Because you're listening to this conversation about the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club, if you enroll in the club, I am going to add an exclusive one-on-one coaching call with you. You can pick either a sequence solution call where we will create for you a signature sequence, or you can pick a cueing strategy call where we will create for you a strategy for cueing that allows you to drop the script and do the walk and talk. Now, to get this bonus, all you need to do is enroll in the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club using the link in the show notes, the link on my website, the link in my Instagram, and then send me a direct message on Instagram with your name and the word podcast bonus. And that way I will verify that you signed up. by checking the signups and making sure your name is there. And then I'll know podcast bonus for Confidence Club, and we'll set up that one-on-one sequence solution call or Q strategy call. And the last thing I want to say is I'm going to give you a head start bonus as well. If you look in the show notes, you'll see a link to my 10 Steps to Confidence PDF guide, and you can get that right now and download it right now and start to get your thoughts moving in a positive, empowering direction simply by downloading and reading that one-page guide on 10 ways to build your confidence. So we've come to the end of this conversation. I am so glad that I had a chance to chat with you. If you have any questions, just send me an email, Karen@barebonesyoga.com, or send me a DM. And I am so over the moon excited about the thought of having you join the Yoga Teacher Confidence Club. I'll talk to you on the next episode. Namaste.